The opinions, statements, and facts expressed on the Josh Bernstein Show are solely those of the host and do not reflect the opinions or beliefs of any of the show's advertisers or sponsors.
He's been called a political savant and the voice of his generation. Real, raw. With the subtleness of a sledgehammer, he pounds out the truth one issue at a time. The Josh Bernstein Show starts where the rest of the media ends. And now, here's the mainstream media's worst nightmare, Josh Bernstein.
Welcome back to the program. There's been a lot of discussion in the past 20, 25, even 30 years as to whether or not preventative vaccines are safe. I am not here to debate whether or not vaccines are safe or not. I've already done that. I'm here to report the truth. I have interviewed former Merck pharmaceutical representative turned whistleblower Brandy Vaughn on my program about a year ago. And I have done a full and extensive expose on the safety or lack of safety or measures of the vaccine industry. You can watch it here as I'll put it in the link of this video. But you can make up your own minds on whether or not you think vaccines are safe. That's not what this segment is intended to be about. Instead, I am going to cover an explosive story that will make you mad, that will make you angry, and even make you scared. Here it goes. A recent lawsuit, coupled with a Freedom of Information Act request, has uncovered some very disturbing and unsettling news about the vaccine industry. Your government has been lying to you. There's a surprise. There's a shocker, right? The Health and Human Services Secretary has been forced to admit that they have not filed the required vaccine safety reports with Congress. Are you ready for this? For the last 30 years. That's right, 30 years. The lawsuit filed by ICANN, or the Informed Consent Action Network, and counsel Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the nephew to JFK, who is big in environmental and health-related causes, they filed this lawsuit and they filed a Freedom of Information Act request to find out what HHS has been doing all these years for vaccine safety. Now, let me give you a little bit of background here. After numerous lawsuits in the early 1980s and mid-1980s against major vaccine manufacturers for injuries, for permanent disabilities, for even deaths related to vaccine injury, the manufacturers were getting sued. They were getting sued left and right by lots of different people, organizations, groups, what have you. And they then threatened to stop producing vaccines as long as they were held accountable to answer to these lawsuits. So they went to Congress and told Congress, we will stop and cease and desist making vaccines if you don't do something about all of these lawsuits. So the U.S. government, sensing the enormous profitability, caved to the manufacturers' demands and removed the manufacturers from all liability when their vaccines injured patients. This was called the National Childhood Vaccine Injury Act of 1986, signed into law by conservative President Ronald Reagan. This made taxpayers liable for injuries by vaccines and not the manufacturers. As a result of these actions, it created an increased incentive and abundance of new vaccines on the market with very little testing. In fact, in the last 2 decades alone, we have seen a nearly 300% increase in the number of CDC-recommended vaccines. As part of the 1986 law, it required, again, it was a requirement, that the Secretary of Health and Human Services submitted a biannual report to Congress detailing the improvements in vaccine safety made by HHS in the preceding 2 years. HHS stonewalled ICANN for 8 months, refusing to provide any substantive response or documentation involving this lawsuit. When they finally turned over the information, shockingly, ICANN discovered that not even one safety report was ever filed in 30 years. So that means, starting in 1988, they were required every 2 years from there, right? 1990, 92, 94, 96, 98, all those years, not one report was ever even filed. So here, let me recap this for you. The vaccine manufacturers were being sued for injuring or killing people. They then go complain to Congress about the lawsuits that are incurring because of these injuries and deaths. Then they threaten to stop making these vaccines. Congress then creates a law allowing the vaccine industry off the hook for financial liability. They pass a bill. The bill gets signed into law, and in the bill, it is required that the HHS secretary is supposed to report every 2 years to Congress on safety measures taken, but never bothered to even do it, and not even once in 30 years, and have admitted to doing that. Wow. Now, this does not mean that the United States and our government has never conducted a vaccine safety test, okay? That is not the case. I'd be lying, it'd be fake news if I said that it was the case. They have, but they have done it in very limited fashion, number one. Number two, many of the people at the CDC that have been conducting these vaccine tests are former vaccine manufacturer representatives. So this is a clear indication of, I don't know, the fox guarding the hen house or the deep state investigating the deep state. This is not an impartial, independent study or an impartial, independent group that looks over vaccines. No, the vaccine industry polices itself, folks, and according to this, barely polices itself because they're more interested in putting out vaccines to make money so that they can grow big pharma, get more people hooked on these vaccines, and then, you know, have more vaccines out there so that everybody makes more money. This is a very disturbing development and truly shows where our government, and more precisely, where the Health and Human Services secretaries throughout the last 30 years, where their priorities have lied. And that is in distribution and financial gains first, and of course, your safety and vaccine safety second. What do you think? Put your comments down below. We'll be right back.